Hello and welcome back to Smallverse Studio. In this video I'm going to show you how to paint this 112 diorama brick wall using affordable acrylic paints. The detailed tutorial on how to build this wall is also available on my channel, and you can also find the link in the description below. Firstly, the painting process can be messy, so use an old newspaper or disposable cloth to protect your workstation. For the first step, I'll be priming the surface of our foam brick wall using some black acrylic paint mixed with some matte mod Podge in a 50-50 ratio. Once we have a consistent mixture, we'll be covering the entire surface of our foam brick wall using a flat paintbrush. Priming is a crucial step in painting foam dioramas, so do not skip this step. This process helps to seal the surface of the foam boards, ensures better paint adhesion, more even paint coverage, and saves paint. Priming may also help you conceal some minor imperfections on the surface of your diorama and provide a more durable paint finish. I'm going to use the paint and mod Podge mixture to cover the entire surface of this diorama wall, including the sides and the top. It's a good idea to perform this step with a soft bristle paintbrush. Try to move your brush strokes in a consistent left-right motion, in line with your horizontal brick rows to avoid leaving unnecessary paint streaks. Post-application, I've allowed the primer to cure for 30 minutes. In between, I mix this reddish-brown paint using various shades of acrylic paints for dry brushing the first layer of paint to this diorama wall. For this dry brush painting technique, keep a paper towel or a piece of dry cardboard stock handy. Start by loading your desired paint mixture onto a flat paintbrush with soft bristles. Avoid overloading your paintbrush, and if you notice a thick chunk of paint on your brush, then simply unload most of it back to the pool. Once the dry paintbrush is loaded, we'll use our paper towel or a cardboard stock to unload the thick wet paint off by applying repeated streaks with your brush over the paper towel. Repeat this step until you notice that your brush has stopped leaving thick wet paint streaks. Take your paintbrush and start applying the paint mixture using an angular motion over the bricks. As you start running your brush, you'll instantly notice that the raised brick surface has started catching the pigments of the paint mixture I'm using, whereas the deeper brick lines remain untouched and still showing their depth from the black primer paint in the previous step. And that's exactly our intention with using the dry brushing technique here in this step. By repeatedly unloading most of the paint over a paper towel, we want to avoid wet paint splotches which could seep into the deeper brick lines and accidentally ruin the depth and realism of our diorama wall. This step requires patience and commitment. We'll need to repeatedly dry brush the paint over the surface or the bricks till the black primer stops to show through. So don't be hasty, or you could easily leave thick wet splotches over your dioramas and mess it up. Moreover, I'm deliberately avoiding the lower brick rows which meet the concrete segment of this diorama wall, keeping my focus on the upper area only. Don't worry, I'll show you how to tackle this part cleanly, and avoid overrunning this paint over our concrete segment in a bit. For now, I'll simply continue to dry brush the paint over the entire bricks, leaving the bottom brick row that meets the concrete segment untouched. Done applying a layer of dry brushed paint, however the black primer still seems to be showing through. Hence I'll continue to dry brush another layer over the bricks for a better coverage. So now I'll show you how to apply this paint cleanly over the lower brick rows without over applying it over the concrete segment of the diorama wall. To do this, simply take a neatly cut piece of of cardboard stock and align it with the starting line of your concrete segment to cover it up completely while allowing the lower brick row to show through. And now you'll apply the same dry brush technique to cover the lower brick rows completely using the same acrylic paint mixture. And with that, we finished applying the first layer of dry brushed paint to our brick wall diorama. Notice that the paint has effectively covered the raised surface of your bricks, while you can still see the black primer paint showing only through the deeper brick lines. Since I chose to extend the brickwork to the sides and top of this diorama piece, I'll continue to dry brush the paint over the sides as well. Once finished, you'll need to allow this layer to cure for about 20 to 30 minutes. While the first layer is drying, we can also add a touch of realism and a comic book art vibe by adding some variation brick tones to break away from the flatness of a unified, freshly painted wall. To do this, I simply take a small quantity of acrylic paints, which I've used to prepare my reddish-brown mixture earlier, and I mix them together to create some new lighter and darker brick tones, which I then start applying to random bricks over the wall. For example, here I'm mixing my reddish-brown paint mixture with some raw sienna to create a new variation of brick tone. I'm going to take this new brick color shade and selectively dry brush this over random brick surfaces to create the perception of bricks which may have faded over time for added realism. You may have noticed that in the real world, bricks tend to fade, get sun-kissed, and even lose color over time in response to their environments. Hence, by adding in these variation brick colors, not only do we break away from the flatness of a freshly painted wall, but also add a touch of depth and realism to this diorama piece. Important to note that it's really easy to overdo this step, so select your bricks carefully as you're applying variation colors. Watch carefully as you'll notice how I spread them out and avoid clustering them in a single area. It is okay to work in clusters of 2s and 3s as you go. However, do make sure to keep a visible space between your clustered bricks and your single bricks as I'm doing it here. Also avoid patterns, like painting your variation bricks all appearing in a single line vertically or horizontally, or even diagonally close to each other. It's always a good idea to take a step back and review your variation bricks before you select your next random brick or bricks to paint. This would help you ensure that you don't end up inadvertently overdoing this step, carefully avoiding clusters or patterns which would create an unnatural or toyish look for your diorama wall. I prefer to use up to 3 varying brick tones for my wall, so here I'm mixing my original reddish-brown paint with a brighter shade to create lighter brick tones which would give the perception of softer, more faded bricks. And finally, I'm mixing my reddish-brown mixture with a deeper red paint to create darker, more newer bricks for more contrast and realism. Once we've finished painting the variation brick colors, we're going to move on to the concrete segment of this diorama wall. To paint this concrete segment, I'm going to apply 2 layers of gray paint over the surface, starting with dry brushing a layer of neutral gray. paintbrush and once again apply a dry brushing technique as we did previously for painting our bricks. Take out a small quantity of your neutral gray and load your brush. We'll be reusing this cardboard stock to help us avoid painting this gray color over our bricks. As you perform this step, avoid full coverage. Let some of the black primer show through the texture of your foam base to create more depth. Once we've finished applying our first layer of gray, we'll take some of this lighter gray to add a final layer of highlights to our concrete segment. This step is optional, but I recommend it, as it will allow the concrete segment of the diorama to catch the lighting better during photography, and it will also highlight all the textures on the concrete surface much more effectively. Make sure to use very little paint. Remember, you're not painting, you're simply adding highlights here. Focus your application on the raised surface and edges of the concrete segment only. With that final touch of highlights, we've finished painting this diorama wall. Let the paint cure for 20 to 30 minutes. Once the paint has dried, this diorama wall looks really good. But we're going to take this from good to great by adding yet another touch of realism to it. This next step is what separates amateur diorama artists from the pros. In this final step, we'll be adding grout lines to our diorama brick wall by using this premixed putty filler. Personally, I prefer softer, dirtier colored grout lines for my dioramas, hence I mixed it with a bit of black paint. You could skip this step and start working with the original white mixture if you like. Once the mixture is ready, you could use a small spatula like the one I'm using to start applying it to the bricked surface of your diorama wall. You could also use an old expired bank card, even your fingers, to apply the grout mixture. Make sure to use your gloves as it tends to get messy. There are a few key considerations to keep in mind as you apply the grout mixture over your diorama brick wall. Firstly, our main objective with applying this mixture to the diorama wall is to fill in all the brick lines. However, this mixture contains micro-granules which latch onto the surface of your bricks, so unless you've sealed your paint job using a matte paint sealer, expect to lose the original brightly painted look, which I'm personally okay with as it adds to the realism for me. Secondly, it's better to perform this step in different phases. So in the first phase, I'm simply using my spatula to spread the grout mixture, making sure it's hitting all the brick lines without applying a lot of pressure, as you can see here. In the second phase, once my mixture has hit and covered my brick lines, I then start moving the spatula in a left, right, and up and down scraping motion. This time, I do start applying more pressure, as much as required to remove any excess buildup over the surface of the bricks while leaving it inside the brick lines. Notice how the bricks are starting to show through, as I remove the excess buildup off the surface, while allowing it to settle inside the brick lines only. I'll carry this same process to the sides and top of this diorama wall, all over my extended brickwork. Upon completion, we'll let it sit and dry for 30 minutes. Once dried, we'll carefully need to remove all of the excess dried buildup over the surface of the bricks. To do this, we'll need a clean, damp piece of this microfiber towel. Make sure it's damp, not wet. dried mixture settled to wipe it off the surface of the bricks, while apply very soft pressure. The moisture from the damp towel will mildly reactivate the dried mixture and make it softer, making it easier for the microfibers to catch and remove them from the surface of the bricks. Just make sure not to apply too much pressure with the damp cloth, or it may start catching your grout from inside the brick lines, and we do not want that. Notice how the clean bricks are starting to show through as the excess buildup is removed from their surface, while the brick lines are now showing the grout as it stays settled inside. We can make repeated swipes. Every time the damp microfiber towel will catch and clean away more and more of this stuff off the surface of the bricks. Just try not to overuse the same side of the towel, as you may start smudging back the removed excess back on the moist surface. Keep switching to a cleaner side of the towel as you make these repeated swipes over the same spots as I'm doing here. Some buildup may be more stubborn than others. You may concentrate your swipes over it to remove as much as can easily come off. Usually the first couple swipes generally reactivate the moisture and soften up the excess buildup over the surface of the bricks. From there on, as we continue to make successive swipes, the grout buildup starts coming off more and more easily, revealing a beautiful brickwork and masonry which mimics real-life brick walls. Once I'm finished cleaning up the front part, I'll repeat this process and clean away the sides and the top of this diorama to finish up. And finally, the 112 diorama brick wall is ready for use. Thanks for watching this painting tutorial. And if you like this video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe for more diorama tips and